All right, thank you all for
Recording in progress.
Thank you all for coming in to this meeting that was created by the African Diaspora Directorate, Friends of the African Union, and hosted by the Edfu Foundation. It is dedicated during this period for our work with UNESCO and the United Nations. That was our original intent, but events have caught up to us. And so one of the events that has caught up to us that we are talking about the creation of a permanent forum for people of African descent in the United Nations. This has been an almost decade-long work that is now in our grasp. And yesterday, the United States, by its actions, killed that opportunity. Yesterday. But as they said, it's not dead, but it's definitely on life support. So we are going to have another vote. We've heard that there is going to be another vote on Monday. Now, yesterday's vote was not actually supposed to be a vote, but rather a passage by voice. The United States stopped that. They raised verbal changes that no one knew anything about, and more importantly, administratively, they created a process that process ran out the clock. And this was not any sleight of hand by misadventure, but rather it was something that was done intentionally. And having it done intentionally meant that the United States wanted not to have the permanent forum. At least that's the way it looks to anybody who watched the session. And so as a consequence, we've got together in terms of those of us on the International Decade of People of African Descent working group. It's a working group that's together for civil society organizations. We're part of that working group. And we said that we should talk about drafting a letter for everyone. And so in drafting that letter, is one of the things that we need to go over today. So I'm going to give an opportunity for those who were in that discussion to sign on, seeing that we had all the confusion that I had sent out the wrong link. What we will do is discuss what happened in Kansas, because I think we have some of the people from Kansas on the line. Okay, and Rod Bradshaw, I know you were there. In Kansas, in which we started operations in Kansas today at Nicodemus, historic Nicodemus.
Well, Hershel, again, as I explained to you, I have a guest here who knows nothing about the African Diaspora Directorate. He knows nothing about the FAU. So I asked you to begin with at least an introduction of who you are and who the organization is. please.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay. Andrew likes to keep things on track, and I appreciate him for that. Okay. So my name is Hershel Daniels. I'm the founder of Friends of the African Union. I previously served under His Excellency David Morrow, who was the senior honorary consul from the Republic of Guinea to the United States, having lived in Egypt under a contract with the Egyptian government from the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. I'm a side scan sonar operator, as well as a cryptographic officer, previously serving in the US military, living in Europe and visiting Northern Africa on a constant basis. My background, when I came to the meeting with Ambassador Ali, who held a meeting on December 16th, 2011, at what is now Africa House. She, the first ambassador to the United States from the African Union, and it was her intention for us in the diaspora here in the United States to connect to the African Union based on what she knew was coming in 2012 in the first Global African Diaspora conference that was going to be held in South Africa. And there was a process for connecting up with Africa, even though Africa has not passed the amendments to the Constitutive Act, which empowers in the Constitutive Act the diaspora, so that the AU's Constitutive Act currently only covers the 1.3 billion people on the continent who are the 55 member states, but that there is a process to connect the global African diaspora, and that was coming into its own in 2012. And so she wanted to get us in America together. And when we went to the meeting, my Senegalese partners looked around, and on the report, we had to say the BE 100 wasn't there. The celebrities and the Pan-Africanists of note, and educators and the HBCUs and African studies programs, that for the majority of them, they weren't there. And so in January 16th, 2012, a group of us who were members of the African Scientific Institute Fellowship and other organizations came together, and we formed Friends of the African Union. And Friends of the African Union, as a civil society organization, operates in the United Nations in partnership with New Future Foundation and Edfu, which are both organizations in ECOSOC status, and directly through the Universal Periodic Review of all nations in the United Nations, and through the working group of experts on people of African descent, and have participated since 2015 in the Financing for Development Forum, which is the top level program for financing the Sustainable Development Goals and setting the world economic system, which is in the process of a reset this year, based on actions of the United States, which controls 70% of the $200 trillion worth of transactions that are government versus business to business. And so we are operating in that with the Federal Reserve as a member of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, which since 2016 has created $298 billion worth of community benefit agreements. We're a signature directly on $118 billion worth of those agreements. And the last one, the $88 billion PNC agreement starts on January 1st, 2022. And so we are now working off of our proposal of March of 2019 to create an overarching diaspora organization that would be a neutral organization for all of us in the diaspora to come together, all 300 million of us and our extended families, that organization would then operate via memorandum of understandings, letters of intent, and contractual agreements to be a representative body for the 300 million of us in this process that I mentioned in the beginning of the Permanent Forum of People of African Descent in the United Nations, and within the context of the African Union's process for its relationship with the global African diaspora. And so it came into being on May 25th, 2019. On that day, the African Diaspora Directorate was created as a result of an intent between Friends of the African Union, Sons and Daughters of Africa, Brotherhood and Sisterhood International, Blacks and Whites Uniting Communities, the UNIA headed by Cleo Miller, and Black Wall Street Cooperative. And so we together created the working entity as a doing business as the Brotherhood and Sisterhood International, because it was at that time the most audited of us with a certified audit, financials that dated back 2 decades, and the capacity to be receiving grants as a 501c3 that is registered with the US federal government, and that could be the most effective as an agency for Friends of the African Union in the plans and actions that we had outlined to the working group of experts of people of African descent in March. So we continued from there in 2020 and meeting with the US government on January 27th, based on our work around the Universal Periodic Review of Human Rights of the United States in our submission in 2019 that we call the Black Folks Plan. Now, the Black Folks Plan is a program that is dependent upon the authority of the president to issue up to, at that time, over $11 trillion worth of new Federal Reserve debt. And so we said that we had a plan of action for Black folks that is in line with the Human Rights Council on dealing with reparations. And so as a member of NCOBRA and as a person and now as an organization, that Friends of the African Union had devised a plan of action called the Black Folks Plan that would take funding from the United States government through the Federal Reserve and create a 75-year plan of action at $80 billion a year, or $6 trillion, based off of the formula that was used for Japanese Americans for interning during World War II. And when we prorated that to $20, and after taking that amount of 20,000, counting for inflation, bringing it up to 2019, August 25th, 2019, taking it back to March 4th, 1789, when the United States of America that we live in started, and taking it through August 20th, 1866, the end of the Civil War officially, that it created a $5.2 trillion payment that would be required. And then we said that there would be over $800 billion worth of economic damage. Like for Black farmers, we can quantify that off of the Tufts study of 2018 that said from 1920 to 2018, that Black farmers lost here in America $120 billion worth of land value that they lost from the 900,000 plus farmers of 1920 to the less than 50,000 farmers in 2018. And so that we took that and gave it a use of proceeds and set it within the United Nations Universal Periodic Review, not as a complaint on the United States, but a statement of fact of this is our history, this is how we came through institutional slavery, how we then entered into American apartheid, and then how we entered into institutional racism through 2019, and the proven facts, and that $6 trillion in a public-private partnership. No more congressional action needed. That's the key point. We don't need Congress to do anything because the executive has the authority to do it. November 9th, we submitted a unsolicited proposal to have this happen. November 12th, the State Department wrote back and laid out how we had to respond. We made a decision to respond with the new administration. And then on the first day of the administration said, we're going to take 200 days in the administration to come up through an executive order 13985 to come up with a solution for these American groups that have experienced racial inequality. Number one, African Americans. Okay. And so we on August 8th, we expect a whole of government effort. And we started out with the number one thing for us in negotiations was agriculture, because if you can't feed yourself, next to health, if you can't feed yourself, your health is going to go bad if you can't feed yourself. So the big three is, can you feed yourself? Okay, are you healthy? And do you have a home? They're all intertwined. And so what we're doing is bringing them together through the United Nations, because the United Nations and the Sustainable Development Goals as a follow-on to the Millennium Development Goals, the MDGs to the SDGs. The key is that there's all this work data. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's what we're not trying to do. We're taking all that and then we're bringing it through the Black Folks Plan, or through now the Indigenous Peoples Plan for Native Americans, now through women as part of the Indigenous Peoples Alliance, driven by people, women of color, okay, people with disabilities, and the SDGs driven by our youth. And that was where the UNESCO connection came, that we agreed with the UNESCO clubs, centers, and associations in the USA, the executive director of that, and the organization that operates in that sphere, that we would become one of the associations that would create the infrastructure around the United States, starting in Hamilton County, based on a project that we were already diving in on, and that when it works with UNESCO, it works with us. It became a win on a cultural level. Okay, it becomes a win on the scientific level. It becomes a win on the educational level, and so that it was a win-win-win situation. And so we called for these calls at 7 o'clock to go in line with the UNESCO Center of Peace summer intern program for their youth, well, it has evolved. Okay, and so it has evolved that I called for this meeting today to do two things. One, to talk about what happened in Nicodemus. Okay, see, Nicodemus today is a serious move for the reestablishment of Black farmers in America, because culturally, this is our ancestors who came out of slavery in 1877 getting together in Kentucky, buying land, doing a wagon train to go to that land and setting up their own city. And it's happened hundreds and hundreds of times before that we don't know that history. And so we joined in with the Historic Black Towns and Settlements Alliance months ago, nearly a year ago, but to make that, participate in that. And I can say the person who could tell you the most about the Historic Black Towns and Settlements and the importance of Nicodemus and that, she's with us today. And I'm going to ask if she could speak to that in terms of the Historic Black Towns and Settlements, to tell us about historic Black towns and settlements in America, and what that's the history and what you look to see for the future of the organization. Mr. Boyce.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Hershel. We're very excited about Kansas and Nicodemus to reestablish and reaffirm our commitment to commemorating, honoring, preserving, and promoting historic Black towns. And as we know, many of our Black towns, particularly in the rural areas, were farming communities, and that's how we survived and thrived and have sustained ourselves for many years. The Historic Black Towns and Settlements Alliance is a international organization, and it's a 501c3. Its home base is in Tuskegee, leadership under former Tuskegee Mayor Johnny Ford. Our alliance is an alliance of Black towns and settlements across the United States, Canada, and we are now adding Mexico, because many people don't know that the Underground Railroad went to Mexico. And you have to remember that Spain freed their enslaved people also in the early 1800s. And so you have to question where all those Black people went. And so our work is really to coordinate and organize people within these Black spaces to preserve what's left, to honor the heritage of who we are, how our ancestors survived and stayed alive, and to really look at our reality today, learn from the past, use what we need in order to be able to sustain these places for future generations. And so we are now branching into, we just closed and opened a chapter in Oklahoma. I am here in Texas. I am a fifth generation descendant of the first Black municipality here in Texas, known as Independence Heights, and I joined forces here in Texas with Prairie View. Most of you know Prairie View A&M University, as well as Kendleton, Texas. And so we have our calls every Friday morning at 9 o'clock, which is going to be Central Time, and Hershel can let you know more about that. But we are growing and moving forward and forging a path forward, and we're glad to be in partnership with you guys here, and let us know if there's anything that we can do to assist or to support the work that's happening here.
So I just wanted to let you know, Tanya, that when the World Conference of Mayors and the Historic Black Towns and Settlements Alliance agreed with Friends of the African Union and the African Diaspora Directorate to put a committee together on a permanent form on people of African descent, that within that context over this weekend is going to be the most important time, because the United States in particular blocked the vote to happen. Okay, and they blocked it by raising an objection. So then there had to be a discussion and a recorded vote, and then they brought up a change by oral, not by written, and they ran out the clock intentionally. And so we put in the chat a working document that's to go out. And I'll make sure that you get a copy of it for distribution for everybody to do a sign on, like what we did with George Floyd, when we got 670 organizations from around the world to sign on to the letter for George Floyd, where the Africa group took the lead on June 12th, and making the Human Rights Council hold on June 17th a review of the situation of Black folk and public safety. And that document now is out and on the streets, and the same thing could happen today. We did have the conference on civil rights was on the conference, and the ACLU was on the phone call today. And so I want to get this to you to have it distributed and seeing if it's the will of the World Conference of Mayors and the Historic Blacks in Towns and Settlements Alliance and associated organizations to participate, to tell President Biden that his words we appreciate on Juneteenth, okay, but his actions of his administration in the United Nations seems completely opposite.
Will do. I think I don't see it in the chat, but if you'll email it, I'll make sure it gets to everyone.
I will do so. Okay. I just want you to know that the permanent forum is an assembly that, when you talk about the historic Black towns and settlements and the history of us establishing those, a permanent forum on people of African descent is the most appropriate and vital mechanism which to bring coherence to a host of instruments that have been tried and tested through the United Nations. But it also provides us with a connection as the 55 million of us in the United States with 30 million voters, that the president has said that he would not have a presidency without us. And so, you know, a win-win situation is such that if the United States was to go down as being the organization that prevented this, that it would not look good, especially for our younger voters in 2022, and saying, what do we get as a benefit from the administration? So that is a discussion that we're looking to have tomorrow as we get it clear. That's what we're going to have. It's going to be tomorrow's discussion of what the strategy is going forward and how the United Nations can be beneficial for people of African descent.
Oh, Hershel, I have a question for Elder Prophet, who is, as I understand it, is on the 400 African American Commission, as to whether any of the activities that we're doing now could be structured so that it does become part of that record as well. Elder, could you introduce yourself? And for the benefit of my guests, please do a full introduction of yourself and the 400 Commission, if you'd be so kind. Elder, Prophet.
Well, this is Sanyanu Cox, and so what I can say about the 400 Commission, which will be real brief, is that, yeah, it was put in place, and I think you mentioned this before, we were put in place as a 15-member commission to commemorate the 400th, documented anyway, 400th year that the first 20 Africans, enslaved Africans, came to North America. So in terms of what the commission can do, I'm one of 15. And so what I can tell you is that we are special government employees, uncompensated, which means we're government employees. So number one, there's only so much I can say on a recorded call, or that I will say on a recorded call, because I can't speak for the whole 15. Also can't speak for the fact that we're federal employees, and so we're held by a certain kind of ethics. So these are conversations that will be had offline, is what I can say. So unless there's something specific in terms of and looking at what the law is, what the law requires of us, we were put in place with a specific mandate. And so the Department of Ethics of the United States governs that, you know, not governs it, but they hold us to it. And I, for one, have had conversations with them, or maybe they've had conversations with me, I don't know. But it is an issue that that I think is very interesting, because as an individual, I know that what's the power is in the numbers, and so that it would be and it would be of some benefit. Well, I guess can't even say that because I can't speak for the group. The other thing is that the group was put in place by senators and Congress people. And so they wrote the law. They put in there what they wanted to happen. And so we did that as best as we could with no funds the first year. And now we have a model that says writing a new history. So yeah, some of these things, um, and I can talk to you more about it offline. It's just like, I'm on the commission. And so asking some,
So if I can, Commissioner, Andrew, what are the things that we are putting in the chat is the commission and the history of the commission. And so that, yes, Queen Mother, we're on the line. I'll send you an invitation. But that the one thing I want you to know is that when we engage the commission, is that we will engage the commission as a whole. Okay, and that's one of the things that we'll be deciding tomorrow is the letter that we would send to the commission, because as the commissioner has made clear, it's a public law and it's governed under certain rules, and so she can't speak out of turn for it, but it is a public commission that has been created and has been extended through 2022. And it is, in terms of, I'm putting in the chat, the information, if you want to see who's on the commission, and others, but we're writing to the commission through this because we've done this with the Black farmers, and these federal commissions, they're governed by a federal law process. And so we're going to do that now. What the commission can do is the commission can hold hearings.
Well, while you're on pause there,
yeah, let me say, Hershel and for Andrew, yeah, we have had public meetings in the past. Yes, we have. We had in Virginia, we had in DC, and we didn't get a big turnout, but we have had a couple. We've also had, trying to remember, I believe we also had some virtual. So I would say address any letter to, yes, General Commission, but our chairperson is Rex Ellis, Dr. Rex Ellis. He was with the Smithsonian, and so he is the chair. The other key players, because again, we are all on the commission, but we didn't write the mandates, and so I would send it, to the commission, but also consider Congressman Bobby Scott, who still is, because he and Senator Tim Kaine and Mark Warner also were key players in what they thought should happen, but whatever the, you can, a public hearing, you can, that might be something to ask for. There are a number of things, but look at the law carefully and make sure it fits within the law, because it's our mandate. So we are mandated to do what's in the law. So that you can take to the bank.
agreed. Well, the reason I asked is because I'm here in Los Angeles, and I think it was December of 2019 that Nick Cannon actually had an extravaganza. It was actually like a 2-hour presentation of the history of the African Americans, and particularly here in Los Angeles. What I was suggesting or asking is that because we have documented activities that we have already produced, Hershel mentioned this activity has been occurring since 2012. My question is that, well, according to the laws as it's written, it seems that we're able, if we so choose, to produce if not a production or documentary, we could produce an outcome that would bring the world up to date and at least get it on the record that it is part of this commission. That was my question, but thank you so much. In the meantime,
No, let me just say that, so I would, put it in a letter form. And Nick Cannon was one of the sponsors in June 12th of 2019, you know that. So he came, brought us to, matter of fact, when we didn't have funds, brought us to Washington, and we did have a, maybe it was February, we had the public meeting, but he did support it in June of last year. So he's aware of it. He was one of our sponsors. So I would, so once you define it that way, looking at the law, writing a letter, stating exactly what you're looking for, then that usually comes to the commission. That's when we have our meetings to talk about, vote on. But you can also, we've had people in the past come, organizations come and ask to speak. You know, you can, there's the public meeting where it's open to the whole public, and then we've had organizations and individuals come and just have to one of the meetings and present the case as well. So that might be something you want to put in the letter.
So, Andrew, in the chat, and for everyone, there's the commission website, a separate website, okay, not the National Park Service. And you go to that website and there's a funding. What we're about to ask the commission in terms of tomorrow in having this discussion with them is an outgrowth of what we know that the Secretary of Agriculture can do. We know that the Secretary of Agriculture has $1.010 billion. We submitted to the Secretary of Agriculture officially on June 9th, previously on April and on March 25th to the Agriculture Committee. We submitted a 4-step process, and one of the steps is to create an economic model of the United States based upon our first international business, which was farming, and the importance of people of African descent in farming in America, i.e., why did they import us, our ancestors, as slaves? And then why did they create an American apartheid that drew down from 900,000 plus Black farmers down to 50,000? And so that is something that we have already previously asked the Secretary. We've not gotten an answer, but that we can ask the commission to be our partner in creating that history from August 25th, 1619 to August 25th, 2019, because that's their mandate by law, signed into law by President Trump on January 8th, 2018. And as you know, in Los Angeles on August 25th, 2019, that you and Lady Alicia Hamilton, okay, were part of the commemoration of that, along with Hamilton County and Washington, D.C., that we held that work. So it is something that we have some history to provide the connection with the commission too.
So again, like I said, that I would go, you know, write the letter that would be addressed to the commission, but then specifically, Dr. Rexella is the chairperson, and then Addie Richburg is our executive director who manages many of the things that go on. So if you write the letter and send it to that, and it should be on the website, send that, and whether you're sending a letter, but also what you're presenting, if you want to present it to the commission, include that in there and to get a date and time to do that.
Yes, and we'll send it to your designated federal officer also. Okay, so like I said, we've worked with these type of commissions before, and so we look forward. And I appreciate you being here to listen to what is going on, and consequently, that's one of the reasons we stream this and we record these conversations and stream them. And they're all available at the African Diaspora Directorate at AHIABGA-TV, AHIABGA-TV 2063, and that on Facebook, and on the pages on the YouTube. That is also Edfu is streaming it to YouTube for that, and we make sure that those channels are at AHIABGA-TV as part of our unified history page. So.
Oh, Hershel, let me just say this as we close. The letter would go to the commission, to the chairperson and the executive director, The congressional and Senate people, these are just people, if you're in Washington, you have conversation with, but the letter does not need to include their names. It only goes to, since we'll be there, we're in place to address exactly what you're talking about. We have had people come on calls, or whatever, have have a platform for their organization to present something. And so if you want to do that, write the letter, and then that goes again to the officer, which would be Dr. Rex Ellis, and we have three other officers, but then Dr. Ellis and Addie Richburg would then get it to everyone else.
Right. And so Dr. Rex Ellis, who's the Associate Director for Cultural Affairs at the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture, who was the former Vice President of Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, and was on the Board of Trustees of the Fort Monroe Authority in Williamsburg, Virginia, is the chair that she's talking about.
And Rex Ellis and Ron Carson are co-chairs. Ron Carson has done a lot of work around Black Lung and Virginia, and so you can look at who all the people are, but to send the letter, the chairperson, the executive director, who of course manages many of the getting information out to us and working on getting people together and that kind of thing. So yeah, that would be the start. I'm just saying, since you're in Washington so much, if you know Congressman Bobby Scott or Mark Warner or Senator Mark Warner or Senator Tim Kaine, then those are people just have maybe a chat with, but in terms of the letter, that does not need to be in there.
We understand.
Right.
Thank you so very much, Elder. Hershel, I see Queen Mother Dolores Blakely has joined us, so I'll let you transition to her introduction if you would.
Thank you. Okay. And by the way, Bobby Scott is a congressman who represents District 3 in Virginia and co-chairs the Congressional Voting Rights Caucus. And so I'll give you that information in the chat as we transition from that. And we're going to have a opening, and we were remiss in doing this for having opening prayer. Okay, and so Queen Mother Dr. Dolores Blakely has joined us, and I would wish that on this day that she would retroactively give us an open prayer. Okay, Queen Mother.
Thank you so much. In the liberation struggle of a people, and Queen Mother wanted to share one of the reflections, and the reflection is on human rights. We call on you, the divine force within us, to be a just people. Help us to be righteous and just towards each other. God, hear our prayer and grant our supplication. We come as children seeking your mercy and your divine intervention. Hear our prayer of loving and being fair towards each other. We know that you are a just God, a God of mercy and love. O God, the Most High, forgive us all of our sins and transgressions against you and each other. Let us be like you, reflect the image of you, of being just towards each other, and show humility in caring for each other with love and respect. We may be different in religion, culture, and traditions. Teach us how to be tolerant with each other. We are seeking your just ways toward each other. Oh, our Creator, we all have a right to food, We have a right to clothing from the elements of life. We have a right to shelter. O Lord, Most High, you knew us before we were ever known or conceived in our mother's womb. We pray to you to keep us on the sacred path with a sound and just mind. Rid us of all harm and danger toward each other. Help us to cultivate love toward each other that is just and fair. Be merciful to us in our understanding of life. Help us with the divine consciousness of human rights. What we want for ourselves, let us want for another. God, let us be your justice. Speak of your justice and fairness. This we ask in our Father's conscious and name. Amen. The reflection of the day. I
Thank
yield
you,
the
Queen
chair
Mother.
back.
Amen,
Thank
amen, amen. Thank you.
And we did not coordinate this, people. Okay, we didn't coordinate it, but Queen Mother, human rights is the issue of the day for what the United States has to vote in on Monday for the permanent form on people of African descent.
Mr. Chairman, everything is in divine order.
It is when you're involved and bringing it to this time from the work that you have done in 52 years in the United Nations and the culmination of the time that we came together in 2013, such a time as this. And I want to go and I see Andrew is chomping on the bit, okay, because he has a guest to bring to the table, and I will let you do so, Andrew. Is your guest still with us?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. The technology is only great when it works. And by the way, let me make one correction. This has been streaming for the past several days and through August 25th to the Encounter Think Tank on Facebook. And then that link is copied to the African Diaspora Directorate and to others. However, I only have 1,500 members in that group. So I've been trying for the last hour and a half to stream it there. I haven't been able to. So I have 5,000 members on my own Facebook page. I'm going to stream it there, but I'll put the link in the chat so then you can share it with anyone else. Dr. Otats Yellowe, are you able to unmute and introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we hear you fine. Thank you.
All right. I feel thrice blessed, and I feel very humbled to be a part of this meeting today. It's an eye opener for me in a lot of ways. I apologize that I have to wear dark glasses. I'm having issues in my eyes, but it's okay. I'm getting better and stronger. It's not a form of disrespect to the group. I am Dr. Otats Yellowe. I am of Nigerian descent, and I'm a permanent resident here in the United States. And I love everything that is going on. It's been on a front plate, burning in my heart. And His Excellency, Prince Andrew Williams brought me on board and sent me an email this morning. I just couldn't wait. I had to join in and leave everything and be here. Thank you for having me. I enjoy every discussion. I'll follow up in every measure that is possible. I have had experience working in forum like this back home in Nigeria. But it's a long shot. So we'll talk about it and we'll get to know each other a lot more as we keep going. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you, Doctor. We're going to open the floor Unless Andrew, do you have another guest?
No, I'm expecting His Excellency Sharif Balde from the Gambia. He's suffering right now. They're having heavy thunderstorms. As you may know, unfortunately, there was heavy flooding in the Gambia recently. And so he'll be able to join us a little bit later, but he's not here now to the best of my knowledge. So I'll allow you to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things that we had on earlier was from Fort Coffee, excuse me, from not Fort Coffee, from Nicodemus. We had Rod Bradshaw on. And he was going to give us a report on what happened in Nicodemus. Let me see if I can get him on. Meanwhile, Carolyn Kennedy, do you want to introduce yourself in the African Diaspora Directorate?
Yes, mentioned.
Okay, I will. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Africa Diaspora Directorate. I am the Executive Director and based in Washington, D.C. I have served as for the last 20 years as Executive Director of the Brotherhood and Sisterhood International, of which I retired in December 2019 and decided to continue my service as the Executive Director of the Africa Diaspora Directorate using the same nonprofit tax-exempt corporation. Very happy to be with you today, and I want to introduce the chairman, Dr. Kofi Adjepong. Did you want to say something, Kofi?
Oh, so what is enough?
Okay, thank you. Why don't we have someone else introduce themselves?
So
Okay.
I want to give them, I'm going to introduce a work in progress. That's a very important work that, especially now that we are have this discussion on the permanent form, is for the continent of Africa. The continent of Africa needs its own version of a Marshall Plan. Okay, so that was where the United States, on its own self-interest, you have to understand there was some people who did it under altruism, because to win the war, we had to destroy the whole manufacturing infrastructure of our enemies. Okay, which then also later came back to bite us because their infrastructure was destroyed. It then got rebuilt with our help. And by the way, using pension money from our unions to rebuild that work, so that by the late 60s, early 70s, they had brand new global infrastructure, and we still had 100-year-old infrastructure, and we were uncompetitive. And so if you want to know, one of the reasons why America was hollowed out is that we helped the world, okay, after World War II. And especially in Europe, because that was a market for us. And so we put together what would be the equivalent of trillions of dollars, okay, today, in infrastructure that brought Europe back to be what it was as a market for us and as a partner in opposing the USSR, China, and their peers, the Great Cold War. So here we are in 2021, and there's another scramble. It's, again, the scramble for Africa, a market that in January 2021 activated the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is the biggest market infrastructure since the World Trade Organization. It's bigger than the EU. Now, it's not as wealthy as the EU, with a GDP of $3 trillion versus an EU GDP of about 15 trillion. The world's economies is first the United States, second China, third the EU. But what we said as a group is that we need a Marshall Plan for Africa. Now, with Queen Mother, Dr. Dolores Blakely, when I met her in 2013 at the consultation on Agenda 2063, we were the only two organizations, New Future Foundation and Friends of the African Union, were the only organizations who were talking about what needs to be done is $1 trillion programs. She had the $3 trillion Goree Island program. And as she said, she wanted Barack Obama to cut her a check. She'll go and pick it up. Okay, she has not changed. She wants Joe Biden to cut her a check. She'll go pick it up. She made that clear in Tulsa. Whereas with Friends of the African Union, we said we will use the Universal Periodic Review of Human Rights of the United Nations Human Rights Council as our tool to get the government to cut the check. So in 2013, we were asking the Obama-Biden administration for a $1.25 trillion check based on housing. And then I met Queen Mother at this consultation, and we both sat on the reparations roundtable. Now we chaired, FAU chaired the economic development roundtable, and we had a large delegation there at that meeting, but we met, and I made sure that in the discussions, although there, we don't have a record of those discussions, as Queen Mother likes to say, the greatest, modern history in humanity was the transatlantic slave trade. I also pointed out there was an Arab slave trade. Now in 2021, we have the chance to all of us, 1.6 billion people of us come together who are people of African descent in the United Nations in a permanent form. And yesterday, the United States, through procedural actions, ran out the clock. And so it didn't happen. The importance of Monday is that our information says that it will happen another opportunity on Monday. And at the same time, in this forum, we can put together for our brothers and sisters, if we care, if we are our brother's keeper from here in America, where we earn $1.25 trillion, 55 million of us in our extended family here earn $1.25 trillion, and the continent's 1.3 billion people earn less than $3 trillion. So it's always been our proposition with New Future Foundation that we accepted formally in the Universal Periodic Review of the United States of 2015, that we accepted that in our 10-page proposal to the government, that we accepted in the first 2 pages explains the Goree Island plan for $3 trillion based on the return, based on Queen Mother's experience in the United Nations and in Africa as a Fulbright scholar who has studied African socialism i.e., are you your brother's keeper? Well, here we are, 2021. So the walls are coming down between the different groups that FAU is involved in. The African Diaspora Directorate for the 300 million of us in the diaspora. The New Future Foundation relative to the Universal Periodic Review, women, children, and the Goree Island Plan, Edfu, and hosting and working with them like New Future Foundation and ECOSOC status. Sons and Daughters of Africa, working with FAU bureaus on country-based issues, whereas 51% of people of dual citizenship or citizenship in nations on the continent and in the Caribbean. But it all comes down to what can we muster? So we put it in with the African Diaspora Directorate in the working group of experts of people of African descent on December 3rd, 2020, a $3 trillion plan of action for Africa. How that could happen from the United States as part of an overall plan of action based on the financing for development model that was going to happen at a high level in April of 2021. It happened, it did, everything is in place, it's going forward, and we joined the group that was preparing that Marshall Plan. Now, in doing that, we were part of civil society in the African Development Bank, which in November of 2019 had cut the deal with the United States government to access lines of credit for up to $5 billion. No thanks to the ambassadorship to the United States because of previous comments was not part of any of these discussions. That's why we welcome the new ambassador from the African Union so we can get back on track with the agenda that Ambassador Ali started us on as a process with CEDAW and ECOSOC and the other organs of the African Union that has reached out the right hand of fellowship and have heard crickets from us. What we have to offer in this development of this Marshall Plan, I'm going to ask the coordinator to tell us about where we are in that process. Mary, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hershel. It's still a work in progress, as you put, but at least the success is that we had the African Development Bank at least recognize that there is a need of that for that hand, and we are also on Tuesday we have African Advocacy Network, which also has been doing advocacy on TRIP waiver, the SDRs, which is usually the international financial assistance mostly, but which does not usually lead to a lot of development. The vaccine issue, whereby we are, if you see how majority of the African countries are still really crying out for the hand of the vaccine. So on Tuesday, we are also going to table it there. And we had from the meeting yesterday, we decided to carry out 2 sectors, which are going to be like a driving force while we are doing advocacy for it. It is still a work in progress, but at least there is a good political will on both sides. The challenge is still like, how do we formulate it? Because the initial Marshall Plan was solely financed by US. After the World War II. But the advantage that we usually even have here is that at least for Africa, thank God US has not yet gone there for that kind of. So a credit that we should at least act out on humanitarian before we are going there just to do rehabilitation. At least that brings the issue of morality, the issue of humanity on the table as well. And also realizing the potentials of the continent. Usually US has got that upper privilege for having not done anything on the continent in as far as colonization. So coming in from a partnership or kind of a supportive genuine would give the continent a progressive preference on that. That's the reason why actually we are like, it should be a US based initiative, while others are still saying, oh, we can even include the European side, which is okay, whichever comes is there. But from the experience, there is a reason why it was the Taiwan was engineered by US, the Japan was, the South Korea was US, other international communities were there. So we are still advocating and looking forward for what may come out. Again, timeline, that is another thing which we were trying to base on. Majority of these agendas, they are there, but remember in a 50-year period, generations of African youth vanish. A 50-year plan, the Marshall Plan for Germany was a 4-year plan. When it comes to these majority of these developing countries, it's a 50-year plan. Well, a 50-year plan is a big period that generations disappear from there. So we are trying to also narrow it to see if we can advocate for a narrower time framework. I thank you for the opportunity, Hershel.
Yeah, so let me give you a couple of things. So FAU and the African Diaspora Directorate, the Black Folks Plan and Relationship for Africa, the $3 trillion plan that we're talking about, we agreed that we would run that track separately, but together in terms of making the agenda items on education and healthcare and workforce development, trade, et cetera, that we would set from the United States that plan of action to give it an opportunity for the United States government to enter into a public-private partnership based on the Universal Periodic Review of the African nations using the Financing for Development model, okay? And so we had started this in 2015 with New Future Foundation as our representative to the in Addis Ababa. And so what we are planning on doing this coming week is to create the African Diaspora Financial Network, okay, Investors for a Sustainable Development Alliance in Africa. Okay, so this will basically follow the already established global world leadership in investors and sustainable development, but we're specifically focused in Africa, and we're specifically focused on the country of the Gambia as a landing point, because the Gambia is the African Union's headquarters for human rights. And so, Andrew, I would wish that you would introduce our guests to talk about the Gambia.
Well, thank you, Hershel. His Excellency Sharif Balde is not only representing the Gambia, but he's a diplomatic representative for ECOWAS. But I'll let him introduce himself, and then he can explain to you how, actually, as I understand it, next year, in addition to what you already know, the Gambia will be host of the Islamic Council. So it's important that we get ourselves at the table so we're not on the menu. But Sharif Balde, please take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good evening from the Gambia, West Africa, to all of you honorable attendees in the room and all viewers around the world. I am grateful to be a part of this historic movement. I would call it the great exodus of our people economically, technologically, and spiritually. So just like the moderators said, I have got some new updates about these fundings for economic development for Africa through minority-led corporations, enterprises in the West, specifically the United States of America, to cooperate with corporations in the continent, as now they are trying to dissuade using public funds in trying to help development projects in the continent. They have floated about $40 trillion. This was just made public after the last G7 meeting by the President of America, Joe Biden. It's on YouTube. I heard it from there. So now, what is important, as the moderator rightly point here, is we should take possession of this and make sure all the advantages that are accorded us, these are not gifts, although they will not also call them reparations, but this is something that is due and is our rights. And as the African Union Human Rights Commission is headquartered in the Gambia, we would also like to spearhead and raise the head of all Africans and all other Africans within the diaspora of African origin, that whatever we have, we much more deserve to have it, and it's not a favor being given to us, because what has been taken from us by far supersedes anything they can ever put on a table to plow back to Africa. So let us take possession of these things and know that this is one of the most important human rights, because our labor forces and everything we are taking, possibly taking across the Atlantic to build the new world. What are we getting out of that? So that is a human right. So $3 trillion is very, very, very small compared to what we need on the continent to develop and add value to the resources already in the continent for the benefit of humanity. But first, those sitting on those resources should also benefit directly. So let us try and coordinate our enterprises, both in the United States, in the diaspora, and those in the continent, to come to sense and see how we could maturely handle this funding and plow it to the benefit of every inhabitant of the continent, and those in the diaspora would be respected and be held high in esteem, and their votes and their rights would be recognized. Because without economic power, definitely we can talk, we can have so many platforms, so many forums, but we would not have a voice. So let us seize this opportunity and help develop the resources of the continent and make the continent a better home for everyone of African descent and those living in the continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just for clarification, in the financing model that we put together for the 30 trillion total was based on 5 centers of funding. One from the Americas, 2 from Europe, 3 from the Arab lands, which received 20 million African slaves, 4 from Asia, and 5 from Africa. The whole idea is following in line with the specialized technical committee, the 4th one that was held in May, and that asked for an African diaspora financial network solution based on the 2012 5 tasks that was given over to us in the diaspora, so that it finally is on the board. And the whole idea of working in the Gambia is because in our solution for Africa, as what can be done in terms of the $3 trillion down payment, is something that in total aspects meets the requirements currently of Africa relative to the vaccines for Delta variant based on what is Western medicine, but also establish African medicine on a par with it, and creating the infrastructure that is supportive of a medicine process that in some cases is 6,000 years old versus Western medicine, which in most cases is less than 500 years old.
Very right.
And so to that end, as is actually the whole idea of having a discussion here in the United States around the utilization of the human rights, and the whole idea that we can have the agreement here in the United States that can spread throughout Africa is based on the meeting with the Islamic Grand Imam leader of Egypt and the Pope that created the document on human fraternity for world peace and living together. And so that is the basis that I've been conducting conversations domestically with our different faith-based groups in Judeo-Christian to bring together that discussion for creating one for specifically the African people through the United Nations, that is signed, that said that diversity of religions is willed by God.
On that note,
so that was signed February 4th, 2019.
If I may interject, on that note, it was actually on October the 4th of October 4th of 800, I believe it was. We just celebrated the 1200th anniversary of that. So what I recommend is that because of the spiritual implications of what we're talking about, that we include October 4th of this year as one of those milestones as we move forward. Thank you. I'll be quiet again.
Again, I'm all for that of the buildup. And one of the things that I want to talk about tomorrow is our schedule of action. So that we're going to put forth a schedule of action based upon all that in terms of a schedule, and lay it out tomorrow, a schedule of action. But I want people to understand when we talk about the Gambia, the importance of the Gambia as a very small nation. Like I said, I used to be a diplomat for the country of Guinea. And so I know where the Gambia is, okay? But it can be the game changer because of what it hosts for human rights. And as Secretary General Moon said about human rights in the Universal Periodic Review, it can be a game changer. And so when we put together the Black Folks Plan on the Universal Periodic Review of Human Rights, we said it's a 75-year plan of action broken up into 3 25-year epochs and reviewed every 5 years. Because we agree with Mary and the group that a 50-year plan and that's why, by the way, that 50-year plan is broken up into 5 10-year periods. And that's why, you know, in America, we didn't have a review of the periods of the midterm, but we just had a review of the midterm of the International Decade of People of African Descent. So it's our chance now to take that 10-year first cycle and integrate all this together, because we have upcoming not only the World Food Summit that we're participating in August and onboarding not only Black farmers, but family farmers here in America, but that we are also coming up for COP26, which is the whole idea is we're facing an existential threat to all of humanity.
Yeah.
And so if we can't come together on this, Africa, which is projected to have a growth by 2050 of having over 3 billion people, will be lucky to have 1 billion people alive if the projections go south. And so we here in America, we here in the African American community, we don't act like that. We don't play in that. We are not part of this whole discussion of the United Nations in a permanent form. When we were on the call today with the leadership conference and the ACLU, I put it to them, this ain't in your #1 wheelhouse. Your #1 wheelhouse is August 28th to have a march when we're facing this issue right now with an administration that on day one said the right thing, executed the right thing, Executive Order 13985. And it's missing in action in any of your conversations, because I've been in your conversations. I'm a member of, our organization is a member of the US Human Rights Network. We're a member of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. We're this and that, but it's missing in the conversation, which is why we set in 2019 in Los Angeles, Washington, DC, and Hamilton County, which elected the first Black woman ever in the history of the state as a county commissioner, and now has done it again, and that there's 2 Black women running the county, 3 women running the county in Hamilton County, in that historic setting. That from that and working from areas such as Nicodemus in that historic setting, Tulsa in that historic setting, and all of that coming together to work with human rights with the Gambia for all of the continent, based on the work that we did in 2018 in Nigeria, where we proposed a public-private partnership like we did here in the United States. In 2019, the chief of staff said, yes, this is a good thing. We will put on the market the sale of the gas that we burn off as we raise the oil. And then 2020 COVID happens, and March on the trade mission that we had planned with the United States. Okay, and that I'm so sad I can't visit Africa right now, but you know, with 7 heart attacks, I need to go with where there's a trauma center. There's only one medical trauma center on the whole continent of Africa that's equal to an average heart center in America. So that when we know that this plan of action was accepted by the then chief of staff to the president of Nigeria, and that the United States Department of Commerce in a trade mission, we were going to use Gold Key service, and that we were going to have it, and that they would talk about over a 75-year period. If you have an asset worth $20 billion a year over 75 years, then that creates a revenue anticipation of $1.5 trillion. So we have the financial institutions who will give us that money now. Not real soon now. We have one bank here in America, because this happens through the Federal Reserve. And if you want to know how this process happens, go look at the Boston Federal Reserve Main Street program. We're not talking, well, yeah, I guess we are talking rocket science, okay, but but we're talking stuff that is in the wheelhouse of nations. Japan this year is going to do $1 trillion about quantitative easing. In the emergency, President Trump did $2 trillion of quantitative easing. Took $1 trillion, put it in some TIPS bonds, stand by waiting for somebody to make a run on the dollar so he can buy it at a discount. Another $1.1 trillion for on the street. And the corporations and cities, they didn't need to use it because they could go to the market and get money cheaper. So it sat there. But if we are our brother's keeper, those of us on this call and others need to be together, because we know this stuff and only we know this stuff, and we need to put it together for our brothers and sisters, because they don't know this stuff and they don't even know it exists. So tomorrow we're going to lay out the next year's agenda. I hope you'll be back with friends and family and organizations. I want to thank everybody for their time. It's valuable and you don't get it again as a do-over. And so I appreciate it. Any last words from anyone as we wrap up? If there are no last words, His Excellency, would you like to give us words as we go about our business today?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what Prince Williams earlier said, that the Gambia is about to host the Conference of Islamic Countries, OIC, Organization of Islamic Countries, in 2022. And this is the largest gathering of world leaders after the General Assembly of the United Nations. And it's very important that we seize this opportunity. And as the Gambia doubles as the headquarters of the African Union Human Rights Commission, we get our voices heard, and we try and use your wise guidance that we access these very important funds in service of our people in the right way. This is a unique opportunity, and I would implore, with your diverse expertise and wisdom and connections, that we make this OIC conference to be held in the Gambia, which doubles as the African Union headquarters for human rights, as a milestone for our people's rights to be heard clear and loud all over the world. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you. And I put the information on the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which is the second largest intergovernmental organization with a member of 57 states currently, in the chat. The permanent forum on people of African descent will create the largest organization of intergovernmental organization in the world, with over I think 70 member countries. And so within that context, we understand why The colonialists are fighting it, but within the context of us coming together to say, can we have peace in our time? Because we are facing a threat to humanity. We are facing a threat to billions of yet unborn, plus those who are here now. Their life will degrade because we will not have the capacity to meet these global pandemics, and do not think that the pandemic that we are in is the end of the pandemics that we will experience. If we do not take lessons learned, then our children's children should call us bad names. Queen Mother, will you walk us out?
Yes, Chairman Daniels. As I was listening to us, and as you know, that New Future Foundation have a chapter of youth in the Gambia. It would be befitting as the Queen Mother representing the 55 million displaced Africans of the transatlantic ocean of the slave trade. In Jufri, I was given my name, Fatimatu Kinte, by the Kinte family. And now Mama is an ancestor guiding us in the Gambia. And my Baba, Sheikh Salou Mbake of Tuba in Senegal. And as Mama Africa and his mother's name that was given to me in the Saint Holy City. As you know that I'm just arriving back from Tuba and Goree Island. So Queen Mother is still in a jet lag. And I just want to say this, what I am understanding and where we need to be with a greater force than ourselves. Power of God. Speak to us in the voice of thunder and lightning, with the sound of roaring that causes a split in the earth of destruction, a mudslide that everything in its way will perish from the mountaintop down to the valley and into the sea. Power that brings us to our knees and wait for your divine intervention. God will turn us around to worship and praise you, O God, the Most High. Only you and you alone, as we worship and give glory. We search and we stretch our hands and pray as we cry, Lord, 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 Hamdulillah. Lord, 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 Hamdulillah. Rescue us in your infinite wisdom, will, and power. So be it. Amen.
Amen, amen, amen. Thank you.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. And
Thank
amen.
you.
Queen Mother.
Queen Mother.
Thank you all. And this conference is now adjourned till tomorrow.